The character of Meruem is one of the most popular individuals in the entire series of Hunter x Hunter. The arc in which he is introduced, the Chimera Ant arc, tends to be thought of as the series' strongest arc, or at least one of the top two, by the majority of fans. Meruem is a huge contributing factor, perhaps the single biggest contributing factor to its success. Meruem is a wonderfully realized and executed character, with a truly special character arc. What is interesting, however, is that this style of character is far from unique, and actually quite common in fiction. The transformation from inhuman and immoral into purely compassionate and human is a character arc that is explored greatly in all kinds of fiction. So, what allows Meruem to stand out? He is the highest quality, quintessential example of this kind of character archetype. Togashi clearly and meticulously plotted out his characterization and arc to allow for a subtle and natural shift in character. We get to know Meruem intimately, both in the manga and the anime. The careful exploration and in-depth look at the internal workings of this man, along with his development, make him one of the most popular and loved antagonists in modern anime and manga. Meruem is amoral. He was born into a destiny and a role that he accepted and took pride in at first. But that slowly became stale as he simultaneously learned of the depth and wonder that is existence, thanks to a few factors, the most important of them being a sweet young woman. From there, Togashi's narrative took us on a tragic and wonderful emotional roller coaster of a character arc. A fictional journey that I know I won't ever forget. In my opinion, due to the meticulous and careful development of Meruem's character over time, it is most effective to analyze this character in a chronological fashion and note the subtle changes that occur in his characterization. The early act of the Chimera Ant arc is dominated by a surprising and drastic shift in tone, especially in comparison to the Greed Island arc that had just been concluded. Here we are introduced to some important new characters like Kite, the Chimera Ants, and eventually important figures like the Royal Guard, Morel, Nov, Shoot, and Knuckle. This introductory phase lays a lot of the groundwork for the drama to come. We learn all about the NGL, the dynamics of the Chimera Ant colony, and some interesting new Nen properties. But in my opinion, Meruem himself plays one of the most important roles during this first act, and he isn't even born yet. The first part of the Chimera Ant arc is so effective because right from the get-go, it is dominated by a foreboding atmosphere that is absolute. This is due to information that we are given at the start. A queen ant is feeding to give birth to an almighty king, one that will definitely cause problems for the hunters and the rest of the world. The stakes are immediately raised. We don't know anything about the king and what he will be like, but we know that it'll be unlike anything that we have seen in the series so far, and it won't be good. The imagery of the queen ant rapidly feeding in a dark cave was just a brilliant visual cue that immediately set a tone that was so dark and ominous that it was nearly suffocating. A bit later on, we are given a clue about what the king's power will be like through the royal guards, in particular Pito. Through Pito's fight with Kite and the resulting impact that that fight had, she is established as by far the biggest threat that we have seen. The watcher's perception of Meruem's strength is hard to put into words when we consider that Meruem's power dwarfs that of Pito. Taking all of this into consideration, Meruem is able to establish the overarching tone and atmosphere of the Chimera Ant arc without even being present. This build-up is absolutely essential in preparing the audience for the impending birth of the Chimera Ant King. Meruem's birth was a pivotal moment in the series. It's interesting because despite the Queen being entirely antagonistic up until this point, the brutal and ruthless way that Meruem almost disposes of his mother does paint the Queen in quite a sympathetic light. Through the reaction of Colt and some of the other ants to their Queen's death, it is here where we get some of our first glimpses of underlying humanity from these formerly seemingly irredeemable characters. This juxtaposition between the newly sympathetic Colt and the chillingly cold Meruem, literally eating his own subjects, establishes the Ant King as an amoral and purely evil character. We are also told that Meruem's name literally translates to the light that shines on everything, which, at this point in the story and with our limited knowledge, either sounds like pure irony or the Chimera Ant's version of some sort of savior, which obviously would not mean good news for our protagonists. When Meruem is born, he is actually quite a one-dimensional and shallow villain. Eloquent he may be, but his early characterization can be summed up by stating that he wanted to conquer, and he wanted to eat only the best human cuisine. Though Meruem was well written and unique in character design, there was nothing particularly noteworthy or special about his character at this point. He was born, and subsequently began embracing his role and purpose. He was conceived to rule the world, so he immediately begins planning for conquest with his royal guards. He never had any reservations or ulterior motives at this point. He was only interested in playing his role, mainly because he didn't think of any alternative purpose to his existence, which is key here. Throughout his early life, Meruem holds a simple philosophy: power is everything. The strong can survive and the weak should either perish or live to serve the strong. It's really quite simple. He shows some respect to his royal guards because of their abnormal strength, but everyone else is vastly inferior to him. They are his lessers, his servants, his food. He and his guards swiftly take over the physical location and political machinations of the Republic of East Gorteau, and begin planning a royal selection in which they will plan to turn the worthy 1% of humans into their powerful soldiers in order to take over the world. At this point, this is how lowly Meruem thinks of humans. The weakest of the species are not even good enough to be food, and the strongest are merely a means to an end. Above all, Meruem only believes in and thinks about power. He has astonishing power that towers over everything else in this world, so of course he should be king. He is newly born and granted overwhelming power beyond belief, so it's entirely realistic that he thinks in this way. At this point, Meruem does not expand his thinking beyond these shallow ideals, simply because he was not stimulated to. Beyond the simple aspects of his characterization that I noted, Meruem is not especially complex or layered at this point. He is rather one-dimensional and lacking in development. However, the potential for change was always there, and one important variable triggered this change. To display his intellectual dominance as well as his physical, Meruem sets out to defeat the best player of every mind-based board game in the world. He ruthlessly disposes of these former champions, even driving some to suicide, though this is not really a surprise to the watcher, as they have grown to know Meruem as a sadistic tyrant by this point. However, after coming in contact with the champion of East Gorteau's Gungi, Komugi, Meruem would never be the same. He is fascinated with Komugi because he cannot beat her. Through their seemingly endless games, Meruem begins to realize that there is another power other than strength. What I especially like about how Meruem slowly grows to care for Komugi is his perception of that care. Due to Meruem's limited view on the world, he interprets his growing connection to Komugi as a fascination with her power, when it's much more than that. But he cannot comprehend love or compassion, so he views his care as a fascination with her skill. Just a subtle little touch there, but I really appreciated it. Meruem begins to voice his opinion that it's possible that physical strength is not the be-all and end-all of life. Here, he starts to grasp how complex life is, and his humanity begins to show just a little bit. He sees that there is more to life. He begins enjoying losing to Komugi, though he cannot yet understand why. He loses focus on the selection and becomes fixated on Komugi. and unbelievably even bothers to learn her name, while lamenting at the fact that he does not know his own. He begins to grudgingly respect Komugi, as we see in the scene where he apologizes in quite an unorthodox way, after initially questioning the young woman's resolve. Soon we arrive at one of the big moments in Meruem's development. After a discussion with his royal guards, in which he initially seems to display remorse for needlessly ending young life and potential, he seems to have regressed back to his original ideology. He exclaims that he is all-powerful and dominant. After all, he does have the power to end the life of virtually anyone, as long as he wills it. But that is the key here. As long as he wills it. He decides that he will kill Komugi, to display his dominance and might. Her skill in a simple board game is absolutely meaningless when she cannot best anyone in combat. She is nothing. She is helpless. However, as soon as Meruem enters her room and finds her being attacked, all of his prior thoughts quickly leave him. In this moment, Komugi is nothing. Komugi is helpless. She is being attacked, so he decides that he must be the one to help her. When Komugi says that she didn't call for help because she didn't want to bother anyone, Meruem is overcome with worry and, to his own surprise, states that she is a special guest. The amazing irony here is that Komugi tearfully says that this is the nicest she has ever been treated. The king of the Chimera Ants, the one who is destined to eliminate humanity, who kills children and eats his own comrades, is the nicest person Komugi has ever met. Meruem is absolutely bewildered. He cannot explain these feelings of attachment and protection that he has towards Komugi. He thought he knew his place in this world, but he has since learned that there is more to life. Now he wants more than a monotonous reign of power. The entire concept of ruling over mindless subjects in a trivial reign of power is so boring and immaterial to Meruem now. He is now completely disillusioned with his so-called destiny, in complete contrast to his earlier attitude, and to the shock and horror of Shiapoof. Meruem soon tells Pito to protect Komugi's safety. He does not know why, but he is upset when he sees this girl in harm's way. He does not yet grasp the concept of human attachment, but he is beginning to. At this point, he could not care less about the impending royal selection. I guess you could say that here, Meruem is experiencing an existential crisis. He is stuck between his ant instincts and his humanity. He strives to understand himself, his identity, his place in the world, and why his purpose feels so shallow and empty. What he didn't know was that this understanding of his feelings would emerge quicker than he would have anticipated.